Bryon, oh, I should mention that all the intros I'm going to do from this point forward, I generated through AI. So I take no responsibility for its accuracy, but they are all very well written. Okay. Okay, so Bryon Jacob, did I mention the O? I think I already did, yeah. Bryon Jacob is the Chief Technology Officer and co-founder of Data.World, a company that is dedicated to building the world's most meaningful, collaborative, and abundant data resource. With over 2 decades of experience in technology and data integration, Bryon has been instrumental in advancing enterprise data management and AI capabilities. Prior to being one of the founders of Data.World, he held several significant roles at companies like Amazon and HomeAway, where he oversaw platform development and the integration of numerous acquisitions. Bryon's academic background includes AI research at Case Western Reserve University, and he is a recognized leader in building large-scale consumer internet systems. I hope at least 50% of that is right. Yep, he likes the adjectives. Okay, so on a personal comment, I would just say that Bryon is also the cause of my obsession with AI. His passion for AI is contagious, as you'll soon see. The seeds of what evolved in today's forum took root at a lunch that Bryon, myself, and Willie had in late December. And so I just want to publicly thank you, Bryon. You have been an inspiration. So now try to do a good job.
Thank you, Barry. Awesome. Oh, I would say fact checking that bio. I think it did a good job. I think everything there was accurate. Maybe a little too much puffery, but the raw facts all hold water. So, yeah, thank you all. You know, this started really. Willie came to see at the Austin Forum. I did a version of this talk, and that was really what kind of seeded this. I've given a version of this talk. I think this is maybe the 4th time. But you know, what I noticed trying to giving this talk is every time I tailored it a bit for nonprofits today. It hasn't always been for nonprofits. It's really, this is, you know, my philosophy here is everyone should be using this a lot more than they are. You're probably not using it enough. I want to convince you of that today. I want to go through a little bit of the like, why is this moment in time so important to really consider what this could mean, what this means for you, and how you can get in and demystify it, get rid of it, you know, the fear, the barriers of like, you know, this is not a technology for other tech guys to be involved in. This is a technology I think everyone here should be using. Like if you can browse the web, if you can copy paste some text, and if you can hold a conversation, you can use this technology to a very high degree of efficiency right now today. I'll take issue with something Barry said. You are the one producing any content you use these tools for. You got to remember that. I'm giving you a little ribbing here when you said I don't take any accountability for this, but like I think that's part of the secret sauce people miss is like these aren't magic boxes that you just take whatever answer out and go with it. Like you are still there, you're still important, your expertise, your judgment, your editorial oversight is there. But if you learn to work with these tools, you don't need anything fancier than the ability to hold a conversation and copy paste some text to get a lot of capability of this. I'm going to walk through that with some actual hands-on examples and kind of show some of that. Actually, how this talk started, I was on a panel talk at the Austin Forum, I think about a year and a half ago, and we were talking about AI, and it dawned on me. So I asked the audience a question like this. So how many of y'all in here use generative AI, ChatGPT, any of these tools? More than half. Well, more than half. Almost everyone raised their hand. How many of you use it weekly, daily, as a core part of your job, as a core part of like you actually kind of rely on it? Okay, and that's good. That's many more hands stayed up there than did the first time I asked that at the forum. I asked at the forum, and to the first question, I'd say 10% of the people's hands rose. I'm like, you're here at the Austin Forum on Society and Technology. You're interested in AI. How are you not using this? And so that was really where the spark for this talk came. I was like, people need to understand, like, this is like, don't sit on the sidelines and let other people do this. Get involved in it now. So that was really the spark that started the talk. So, yeah, so it's how and why. So let's go into this. So, you know, there's a moment we're in right now. It's not yet too late for you to kind of dig in and engage, but like that window of opportunity is closing really, really, really fast. And I want to talk through like why so urgent, right? Okay, there's this great technology, but it's going to be there. It's, and the reality is that that's true. Your AI is going to become a deeply integral part of your life over the next 5 or 10 years, whether you engage with it today or not. But the moment we're in is one where the urgency is there because this has only existed in the form where you can engage with it for a couple years, and the speed with which it's changing is literally unfathomable. Like we've all kind of been going through the last 20 years of technology change, right? The web, mobile devices, things like that. This is orders of magnitude faster than that. How fast this is changing. This is printing press level, how much this alters the very, like everything that we do. So I want to talk a little bit about this timeline. If you haven't been deeply involved in this as a researcher, this is probably fairly opaque. 2017, Google published a paper with a new architecture for deep learning models called the transformer. This is basically the architecture that allows large language models to exist. Prior to this, AI machine learning has been around for a long time. This architecture just turned over a new level of how efficient we can make these things, how quickly we can learn from really massive corpus of data. From this time, from 2017 till about 2020 till November 2022, this mostly happened in the dark. If you weren't a researcher at a large company or academic kind of following this, you probably were not aware this was going on at all. Those of us who follow this stuff closely saw some really interesting stuff happening with BERT and with the early GPTs. Like, oh, that's really interesting. But you couldn't even get access to it, right? If you weren't inside a research lab at a major university who worked on this, or you weren't working inside of Google in secret, you couldn't actually touch and feel and play with this. So I would say everybody, myself included, who follows this stuff, I've been involved with this since I was in grad school a million years ago, and I was floored by the capabilities that were available when OpenAI released ChatGPT and actually allowed us to go in and really play with these models. Like within days, I was like, this is 10 or 100 times more intelligent, more useful than I thought these models had become, having had some exposure to some of these things. If you weren't in that world, this was just a completely seismic event. Over this period of time, from that 2017 to 2022, there was approximately 15,500x increase in the capabilities of these models. That green line at the bottom, this is an exponential curve, right? You see up the left-hand side, every step up goes up 10x, not linear. That green curve is Moore's law. That's the famous Moore's law that says we double our computing capability every 2 years. This blue line is what we actually saw in this area over that period of time. It was 10 trillion times more capable than what we could do with these generative kinds of capabilities at the beginning of this curve. This is what led to things like ChatGPT coming out. And if you've used these tools at all, I mean, you've probably had some of those. I deeply know how this technology works. I know it's just a piece of computer software running a really fancy linear algebra, and it feels like you're talking to something. It's a little spooky sometimes, right? You have this experience of like, I'm talking to something in some cases seemingly more intelligent than me, that has better responses to things than me. I know it's not, but like you have that experience. That's how capable these things got in that short period of time. So this was really that R&D phase. At this moment, OpenAI released onto the world, hey, everybody in the world, sign up for an account. You can actually start interfacing with this, figuring out what you do with it. The reason they did that, by the way, is they wanted to get it to the point where it could actually hold conversations at the level that ChatGPT does now. And the way these things learn is they learn from data. So at that point, they had these systems, and they were really good at predicting the next word as though you were writing a document. They were not that good at holding conversations. So they released it out there and had millions of people come and have a lot of conversations with it. And then they went back and retrained the next version of the model on those conversations to say, these are the conversations that went well, these are the ones that went poorly. Learn how to have a good conversation based on these millions of conversations that we just had. So this was all kind of a strategy for basically building up a better training data set. So this is what happened when they released it out there. This is another fun logarithmic scale chart. This is the number of days it took to get to 1 million users and then to 100 million users. So things that had, Netflix's curve took about 10 years to get to 100 million users. Going back down the list, something really fast, Instagram took right around 3 years to get to 100 million users. The line for ChatGPT straight up, it got to 100 million users in about 3 or 4 weeks. It was the fastest adopted piece of consumer available technology. Now, the reality is most people came, chatted with it a couple times, and then didn't find any real utility with it and went away. So I don't think that I don't think they suddenly had 100 million active users who've been using it continuously since. But if you listen to any recent, their growth is as the models get better, as they add more capabilities to it, it's still incredibly fast growing. A lot of people are adopting it. So if you look at the timeline of 2023, so from the time that was released over that first year, these were all the kind of major releases. And really we got to GPT-4 about halfway through that year, which was miles away of the first version of GPT. We had some of the big open source models, the Llama models that Meta puts out, the Mixtral model. These were kind of like the really significant step functions in like new models that were better and smarter than the previous generations. And I tried to find a chart that would be useful for all of 2024 or 2025 to date. It's too busy. Like the pace of innovation on this is such that like you have to talk week over week. You can't talk year over year. You can't talk quarter over quarter. It doesn't make any sense. What is new and innovative and cutting edge literally changes week over week. Because with OpenAI kind of opening the floodgates, this is where essentially all of the big technology money investment is going, is into AI. It's either going in with the handful of companies that produce these used models, it's going into training and building new models and building new ecosystem around it. With every other company, every other tech company, it's going into how do I utilize these models in my technology to make them smarter, more capable, et cetera. When you put that kind of focus of essentially all tech investment going into this, everyone is innovating on this at the fastest speed possible. Everyone's competing to figure out what this means for them. The AI models are basically dismantling how people interact with software to a large degree. A lot of the kind of big SaaS platforms are realizing that like people are actually expecting a more conversational, easier to touch interface, and so the big platforms that have a lot of established base within organizations are having to go in and rethink I can't expect people to dig through 27 menus of clicking through things and go to training to learn how to use the software. They expect the software to be able to speak English and get its job done with a conversational interface, and so everyone's kind of having to face that and integrate it. I like this chart, most of it. I'm going to talk about the parts I don't like, but this one kind of really shows what that exponential looks like, right? You have all the way on the left here, 2012. One thing I don't like about this is this kind of pretends AI started in 2012. It's been actually in development from the 60s. But what I like about this is this chart looks kind of almost like a flat line along the bottom, and then it starts to look like a vertical line on the right. And that's what exponentials look like. That's what even all the advances that happened for 60 years up to the transformer architecture in AI kind of look like a flat line relative to what's happened in the last 5 years, or in the 5 years from 2017 to 2022, when you start to see a little bit of a bend. And then when you look out beyond that, you start seeing us hypothesizing about things like artificial general intelligence, artificial superintelligence. For AGI and ASI, for those who aren't familiar with those terms, AGI is essentially the point at which we have AI systems that are equivalently smart to a person in every way. An AI that you would say, this can perform any task a person could as well or better. And then ASI is what happens when you get beyond that? Is there an upper limit to how intelligent a system can be? Now, what I hate about this chart is people trying to predict those things. We don't know enough about what that even means to do it. So I'm just going to call this too hard to predict and way too hard to predict. But the thing that is important about this chart is and this is where I say this is that short window of time. We are on that bend of the exponential curve. This red zone, this is where I think if you want to meaningfully engage in the conversation around how does AI provide me any sort of advantage in the world? How do I get to be part of the narrative and help decide in any meaningful way how this plays out? This is the time to do it. Because on the other side of this, it will have been figured out. It's going to be integrated into every aspect of what you do, whether you like it or not. And you can go, and most of humanity is going to go along for the ride. And the thing that inspired me to put this talk together and do it for any group that'll listen to it is the more people who kind of get engaged now, the better. Because I think this is a huge leveling up for anyone who gets involved in it right now, and it's going to be a huge disruptor to everything. So, people people love to predict when we're going to reach the technological singularity, which is that ASI moment. I think whether you believe that's 5 years in the future, 15 years in the future, not possible because machines can't possibly be as smart or special as people. Whatever you believe on that, I think the reality is whether we reach that point or not and how soon we do, the amount of change this is going to have to everything we do is huge. So a couple caveats real quick, and I'll get into some actual tangible examples. This is, I'm not going to talk a lot about the ethics of all this today, but I like to call it up to say, like, people have real ethical concerns about AI, and those are legit, and I would love to have a long talk about it. That fills a whole hour in and of itself. You may be of the opinion that we're doing this too fast, that we're doing it with too little regulation and oversight, that there's too much job displacement without us doing, like, those are all super legitimate concerns. I have all of them, and I'd love to talk to y'all for an hour about it. Today, I'm going to focus on the idea, this is a philosophical point that I believe, which is, regardless of what you believe, you should get involved with it and do it, because you sitting on the sidelines saying, no, I don't like AI, it's bad, isn't going to change the fact that the train's coming and you can either get on it or get run over. So that some of the things I'm going to say here be like, oh, I really don't think society should go do this. I'm like, hear you. Society is doing this. You can choose to get in the car and try it yourself and see what you really feel about it, or you can choose to sit out and hope that it goes away. It won't. And again, like on that, one legit concern I think people have, I have. You think that AI is going to be controlled by a small number of tech elites who are pulling all the strings and have way disproportionate power with no oversight from the average people? Yes, that is going to happen. That is happening. The best way to saying I'm not going to use AI isn't going to change that curve. So, okay, enough said. Yeah, the Star Wars metaphor here is obvious. Great. AI pictures are fun. Okay, so the best way to learn about AI is to use it. And that's the thing I really want you all to come away with today is, like, jump into it, use it. I'm going to go through some examples. I'm going to show some use cases. I really want to underscore the point of, like, hopefully the stuff I show is useful. I have some links in here that I'll send out and share if they're useful. But, like, this isn't a recipe book for just go take this and clone it and go do exactly what I do here. It doesn't work like that. I think you have to engage with this technology, have conversations with it. I'm going to show some examples. Happy to share anything I've done here, because taking other people's examples and building on them is a time-honored tradition in software development, and it should be a time-honored tradition in prompting and working with AIs. But the real takeaway here is start having a conversation with these things and learning what they can do and learning how they interact with your brain, because it's what you bring to the table that actually makes these things more valuable. If you try to just copy what somebody else is doing, it's not going to work that well. Okay, and it's a general purpose technology. I added this in because this is like some news that came out last week, and I thought this made a really great point for nonprofits. So the Shopify CEO made a little bit of news last week. The headline is, he says staffers have to prove jobs can't be done by AI before asking for more headcount. So this is kind of hitting right at that lens of, like, is AI replacing jobs? Well, he's not saying I'm going to fire everyone and replace them with AI, but he is saying we're not growing by any headcount if you can't do the job with AI. He actually released this memo. It first got leaked, and then once it got leaked, he just released it himself so that everyone could read it in his own words and know that it came from him. And this is obviously too small to read. I took the most important sound bites from this. Reflexive AI usage is now a baseline expectation at Shopify. Every single employee at Shopify is expected to use this, learn how it applies to their job. If you're not doing this, you're not doing your job, period, full stop, is his mandate. What we've learned so far is that using AI well is a skill that has to be carefully learned by using it a lot. It's just too unlike everything else. And so training and support is obviously important, but it's also, we don't have all the training and support needed for you to figure out how to adapt this, and this technology is too unlike everything else. You have to get in and hands-on use it. Learning is self-directed, share what you learn, and then this is the quote that got all the headlines. Before asking for any more headcount and resources, demonstrate why you can't do it with AI, which obviously forces everyone to think about, well, how could I do this with AI? And my hypothesis, and I'm sure his as well, is most of the time you can find a way to do it better, faster with AI. Okay, so when I first gave this talk, I gave everyone the advice of, if you're not deeply immersed in this, if you don't really know where to start, everyone should start with ChatGPT. It's kind of the OG thing that's been out there for a while. It's got the most kind of user-friendly affordances, things like that. It is still great. However, one thing I would say that's changed in my thinking on this is I actually think there's at least 3 that are, like, worthy contenders for that. So I would say, consider ChatGPT, consider Claude from Anthropic, consider Gemini from Google. This is not to say that all the other things out there are bad. They're definitely not. If you don't see your favorite tool up here, it's not that I hate it. It's just, I think for some, for the specific advice of, I want to go home tonight and start using this right now because I'm excited by this talk and I want to figure out how to do this. Pick one of these three, try it out. Try another one. I pay for the professional paid versions of all three of these, partially because I want to be on the cutting edge, and they are trivially expensive relative to the amount of value they give. I don't recommend most people pay for all three of these. For most people, pick one of them and find the one you like the most, use it till the free limits run out, and then pay for it. But these are things, and you will end up going to a paid version if you start using it with anything like any kind of regularity. They're like $20 a month. And again, use the free version of it until you hit that limit and they say, okay, to do more of this, you have to pay. If you're not getting $20 a month of value out of it at that point, email me, please. Let's have a conversation. Seriously, I'd love to convince you that you should probe a little bit deeper on that. And then also, I want to caveat here too. I'm talking about kind of personal use. Get started on this. Very small organizations. When TechSoup talks, they're going to talk a lot more about how you actually can incorporate this better at the organizational level. And it's a very different equation there. And so, this is a different story than like how do you bring this to your whole organization. All right. So this was one of the examples I had in my previous talk, which was kind of oriented more for entrepreneurs and tech professionals. So I'm just going through basic example of like content generation. So one of the things that AI can be really useful for is helping you compose your thoughts in writing. So you see me typing a prompt here. Essentially what I'm doing is I'm saying I work for this company, I have a sales lead, here's her characteristics. Help me write a professional sales mail for this. And it zoomed by pretty quickly there, but I typed in a little bit of raw data and it spit out a pretty professionally written sales email. I could review that, copy paste it and send it. Did that change my life? No. Did it save me 10 minutes of writing that email and editing it? Maybe. So this is like, okay, this is hello world, the most basic thing, right? The most basic thing that I think AI can help you do is write a little content. Go from rough, scratched ideas to polished content with a nice structure, good narrative form. It helps you organize your thoughts. So the next thing I did was I said, okay, okay, great. Yeah, this is right. So now I've taken that same chat, I've uploaded a spreadsheet of sales leads that my sales team got at a conference. And I said, great, can you write one for Michael Brown? I didn't have to tell it anything about Michael Brown because he's on the spreadsheet. And so it went into the spreadsheet and said, oh, okay, well, Michael Brown works at Home Depot and he cares about customizable dashboards. And so that gets incorporated into the content. It's customized for him. So I'm kind of, I'm able to basically take something like a spreadsheet, some other content, drag it. This is not magic, right? A human could have done that, of course, but I didn't have to. I basically said, here's a bunch of content. I copy pasted a spreadsheet into the chat. I said, go into this spreadsheet, find this guy, write me a customized email. I got a beautiful customized email that I can copy paste. That probably saved me 20 minutes. I don't know, saved me some time. Last thing I did is like, oh, well, you've got that whole spreadsheet. Why don't you just go write me an email for all of them? And so it goes and reanalyzes the spreadsheet and thinks, and comes back with, great, here's a new spreadsheet where I've just put a customized email into a new column for every person in the spreadsheet. And I don't have a demo of this, but you could go further with some of the more modern tools. Like I could actually plug this into another tool and say, great, just go send all of those and push it into my email automation. But this now just saved me material time, right? Saved me how long would it take me to go through and write 100 emails to 100 people and draft them up? Now, there's still sort of like, are all of those, you're responsible for the content that comes out, right? So what are the stakes of this? For me, a sales lead email based on the content in this spreadsheet, I'm probably pretty comfortable after I've tried this a couple times, just copy pasting those and sending them. Whereas I'm not going to be comfortable doing that with all the content I put out there. So you've got to kind of weigh what's the chance that it made a mistake versus but I also look at this. This is a tool, but I think the way you interact with it is less like a piece of software. What if you had hired an intern to go do this task? Given them the spreadsheet, said, go write me customized emails for all these people. Is it possible that intern might have made a factual error, a typo, small mistake? Yep. Are you going to read all 100 emails before you send them out? Or are you going to send them all and deal with a little bit of breakage? Anyways, I think that's the mental framing I'd like you to start thinking about on this is like, think of this like you have a really educated intern who knows a lot about everything on the internet because they've read the whole thing, and they can do these kind of menial content tasks for you. So when we start talking about nonprofits, something that always comes up is the idea of like thinking about grant proposals. So I wanted to do I did a more sophisticated content generation example around grant proposals. Huge caveat here, I am not experienced at all in writing grants for nonprofits. So if I got something here materially wrong, that's on me, not the AI. But I think the example is going to be illustrative either way. I did this one in Claude, I guess. And oh yeah, a caveat. So one thing I wanted to do a little side quest here. I mentioned, all the investments going into AI. There are tons of fit for purpose AI tools out there. I found this link. I'm neither endorsing nor non-endorsing this link, by the way. I'm bringing this up to make a point, which is there's a lot of investment going in. Everyone who has a little bit of expertise in a vertical area is trying to build AI tools to help people in that area by streamlining some of these workflows. So I found, when I started doing research for this, I found this article, 20 Best AI Tools for Nonprofits, Unlock Efficiency and Funding, published by FreeWill. And surprisingly, the #1 tool on the list is Grant Assistant from FreeWill, on FreeWill's list of 20 best AI tools. I feel like I'm picking on FreeWill here, and I'm sorry, I don't mean to, because I literally do not mean to say that Grant Assistant's not a great tool. I know nothing about it. I literally know nothing about it other than this article. The point I actually wanted to make is, I think before, and some of these kind of fit for purpose tools are really great because they like streamline the process. They will give you like a nice clickable interface you can just jump right into. However, the thing I really want y'all to take away is like the technology inside of these things is exactly the same. They're all built on top of they're all built on top of one of these LLMs, and most of them are built on top of the same 4 or 5 LLMs at the core of it. And so the general purpose tool that you can just have a conversation with and share documents with is the same thing powering any powerful tool like this you use. And so what you're getting is training wheels and guardrails that maybe help you organize the information that's going into and out of the LLM, but at a cost of you actually can't do everything you could do if you were just directly interacting with the model. And so my strong advice is, before you go start investing money, time, training on another generation of specialized tools that embed AI, learn how to use the more general purpose tools. Learn how to basically have a general purpose chatbot that's trained that has your organization's data in it that you can ask information. Learn how to use this, and then you're going to be in a much better position to decide, is this tool actually giving me value over and above what I could do with the AI itself? Okay, so I'm going to try to go through this pretty quickly. This one's not an animation. I actually just I have a long chat thread here where I'm building up my grant proposal demo. I took screenshots at every step so I could kind of show you the whole conversation. This is going to require a little bit of imagination, because in this one chat, I am basically building my demo for y'all and highlighting how much I don't know what I'm talking about. And so I have to I'm generating fake data, which it excels at, generating very realistic fake data, which is actually very useful. And then I'm using that fake data to actually write a grant proposal that I think you will agree, modulo what I get wrong because I'm not very good at this, it was a relatively good process for generating and then ultimately fact-checking a grant proposal. So again, I'm not an expert in this. Some of y'all here definitely are. Look at what I'm doing and think, oh, if I had been doing that instead of Bryon, I would have said it like this, and then go try that, because you'll probably get a much better result than I did. Like it's almost certainly possible to do way better than I've done here. Okay, so I'm going to use Claude to help me write a grant proposal. And since I'm doing this as an example for a presentation, I want you to hypothesize that I'm a small nonprofit who has a project we want to pursue a grant for, come up with a few ideas. And it came up with a bunch of ideas, but the first one was a community digital literacy initiative. Free computer access and internet at neighborhood centers, basic digital skills training. Perfect, this fits great for my example. So I said, great, that seems perfectly. #1 seems perfectly suited. Let's give it an AI focus too. So we're looking to fund our project for AI digital literacy. Let's say we're based in Austin, Texas, come up with a name and a mission for our nonprofit and a brief high-level description. And it invented Austin Digital Futures. So this is a fake organization that Claude made up based on my prompting. It has a mission statement, an organizational overview, a project that we want to go do. This is great. I now have raw material that I can use to say, so this is all fake. Here's where you would drop in your real content because you have a real nonprofit with a real mission that humans actually came up with. Okay, this is great. Can you do some web research for me and help me identify organizations that would be good to submit a grant proposal for this? Ideally, organizations that publish grant proposal guidelines we can review here. And it came up with a bunch of them. And it came up with 6. And I looked at the 6 and I said, these 3, number 1, 3, and 6 from your list look like the best candidates to me. Pull in their guidelines and synthesize a single set of guidelines that would ensure we check the box. So we're gonna submit to the GTO, the City of Austin GTOPs, the HEB Community Investment Program, and the Saxon Family Foundation. I don't know if any of y'all are familiar with any of those organizations. They are all real. This was a real web search, so it's taking my fake nonprofit and telling me which real organizations I should submit a grant proposal to. Obviously, we shouldn't really submit the grant proposal, but yeah. All right, so okay, great. So let's assume our project meets the criteria. The first thing I did is like, there was criteria of like, in the real world, does this project meet or not? Let's make the assumption that we're gonna meet those criteria because it doesn't do me any good to have my grant proposal, demo cover a project that wouldn't meet their criteria. So first I want you to generate a document that contains a rough sketch, just an internal draft from one of our board members that they would have written to kick off the project. And it does this. In fact, it does this. I'm sorry, I'm here. It does this. In fact, it invents the fake person on our board. So Maria Vasquez, our program director, wrote this internal proposal. And again, I'm not showing, I mean, these are meaty documents. This is like a 3-page document. I read it. It's really well put together, but also it's rough draft. It's an internal document. Like this is not a polished proposal yet. This is like Maria, and it generates this in about 4 seconds, right? It just immediately starts typing. I was like, oh, of course, yes, here. I'm Maria Vasquez, and I wrote this whole thing for you. It made up the name. Okay, next, I want you to generate an email thread between our board members discussing the proposal and proposing some changes or asking questions. In particular, have some discussion about how we'd reduce the scope to lower the funding. I imagine that's a topic on every board conversation about funding, and have some discussion on how we can ensure the project's fully aligned with the organization's objectives. Email thread of about 20 messages from James Wilson, the board chair, and the rest of the board, going back and forth discussing a bunch of topics. Now, why did I do this? Why did I do this? I did this because in the real world, this is the kind of messy content you will have. You will have somebody proposed a project and wrote up a doc, and you'll have an email thread between the board. I know a little bit about nonprofits. I'm on the board of the Austin AI Alliance, so I know a little bit about this stuff. So and you're going to have this kind of content. The last thing I did was like, okay, great. The board chair suggested that we have a 90-minute Zoom. So I said and asked Maria to circulate a revised proposal. So I said, great. Now generate Maria's revised proposal considering the email, which is what she would have done. And then I said, okay, now let's pretend that board meeting happened and give me a transcript of it. Because with these AI tools, if the AI tools built into Meet and Zoom and everything like that, you can get a transcript of every meeting you have. If you're not doing that, start doing that immediately. Start recording every call you have and getting a transcript or an AI summary of it because that's such useful content. All right, so now we're at the end of all this. Okay, so now we're Maria. We have the original and revised proposal. We have the email thread. We have the transcript of the board meeting. Maybe you have 10 other documents. Marnie brought up a great point earlier. Maybe you have the last 4 grants that you wrote that got accepted that you like. You should throw that in too, right? This is what grants that we tend to get accepted. Throw all that in and say, okay, I'm ready. We pulled together the guidelines from the 3 organizations. Let's create our submission. And then I do this a lot. You learn this as you work these things. I was like, before you just start drafting it, can you summarize our strategy and any additional questions that we would need Maria to answer? It came up with that strategy. I said, great, generate Maria's answers to those. So there was some questions that came up in the email and it came up with the answer. And then finally, I said, great, let's draft the master proposal document. And it went off, and this took about 90 seconds of content generation. It's like a 20-page grant proposal that checks every box on all of the guidelines for the 3 organizations we pulled down, that cross-references all the content from Maria's original and revised internal proposal and all the feedback from the board in the email thread and the board call. I said, what would be the changes you'd make to format this for the specific GTPOS? Because each one has their specific, like, you have to have 200 characters in this box kind of thing. It gave me the list of that. Great. If I remember right, Saxena required the submission of a letter before a full proposal. So it basically says, yes, I can draft a letter of inquiry and the attachments to that to go to. All of the kind of necessary content, I'm able to go generate all this. Now, so the last thing I did here, just because I want to make sure we don't run out of time, I was like, I'm still responsible for this content, right? If I send the proposal into Saxena Foundation and either I misrepresented facts and I lied, or I missed the guidelines, it's still on me. So what I did was I said, look, before we send this out, it's really important to fact check this. And of course, we're going to read the whole document, but like, I need to actually engage my staff, the rest of the board, to help here. Could you generate a checklist of every factual statement that's made across this entire thing and hand that to me so I can go hand that around to the board and my staff, and we can go basically checkpoint by checkpoint fact check, like, this is what is said in this document, almost like almost like legal red lines, right? I'm going to basically go through and say, here's every factual statement we made. Is this all correct and accurate? Is this the way we want to represent ourselves as a partner to the grant doc? And it did that. My final thing I said was, great, capture the most relevant prompt templates and techniques from this to go into my prompt library to share with colleagues. So I have a document so that the next time somebody wants to go write a grant on our organization, I have that. And this is another thing I encourage you all to do. Again, if you can copy paste, you can use this technology. When you find something that works, ask the AI to summarize it into a document and copy paste it into a Google Doc or your wiki or wherever you're going to build up a prompt library. But remember what works. It's just text. What works is just text. The AI can summarize it for you, give it in a format, you can reuse it. And so I created this Google Doc. This link is here. Again, all the caveats apply. I'm not a grant writing expert. I have no idea if, I think this probably did a pretty good job given what I do know, based on the fact that it's kind of it's a good path for taking rough, unstructured content of the sort you probably have, following guidelines, producing a document. Somebody who's actually an expert at getting funding should review this grant proposal and add their own flair to it and tell it to phrase things better. I gave it no guidance on writing a good, compelling proposal because I don't know how to do that, but y'all do. Okay, this doc I shared this doc publicly in case anyone would like to look at it and it's useful. I'm gonna, just because we need to wrap up at 10, Barry, is that right? Okay, I'm gonna zoom through a couple of things really quickly so I only run over 2 or 3 minutes. And perfect. Okay, so one thing I wanted to talk about in this section is one part of these tools is the ability to create custom GPTs. I showed a demo in my previous one of ChatGPT's custom GPTs, but I was playing with Gemini's gems, and so I did that here. But the idea here is, rather than just going in and talking to the general Gemini chat agent, you can teach one to focus on a particular task. You can give it this focus so that it can actually be better at this task, and you can share content with it. So here, I'm building a donor comms agent. I created these 3 fake assets about my Austin Digital Futures, which has like my previous donors list and my current projects and things like that. And so I'm building this comms agent and say, great, can you choose 3 of our major donors and write a customized outreach email for them? And it can go do that. And again, it's got this data kind of built into it. So this is a way to kind of build up a set of agents that aren't just general. You don't have to tell it in every conversation what you're there for. When I click on the donor comms agent, it knows I'm here to write communications to my donors, and it has all the content that it would need at hand to do that. So I don't have to go tell it how to go find it. AI for coding. If building software isn't all a part of what your nonprofit does, last time I gave this, I was talking about some of the companies I work with as an advisor and some of what we were doing at my company, where we're starting to use some of these AI tools. Since then, this has gotten 100x more powerful. So what I'm showing you here is a tool called Claude Code. And what you're seeing is a bunch of code streaming by here. I dropped into this. I would have slowed it down and showed you, but we're running low on time. So I dropped into this Claude Code session. I typed up about a 2-paragraph description of a tool that we would use to power volunteer onboarding or sorry, participant onboarding for this nonprofit, this project we've been talking about. I described this project at a high level, a couple paragraphs. I said, go build it for me. It built it. Here we're getting to the phase where it built it and tried to run it, and it had some errors. You see me basically copy pasting errors from, hey, you tried to run it and here was the error. Go fix this. My entire engagement with this, front to back, was I gave it a 2-paragraph prompt about the app I wanted it to build, and I copy pasted the errors that occurred when it tried to run it and ran into some bugs. And I ended up with this tool at the end of it, which works. I can log into it. I can click around in it. It's got the basic. It's an MVP. It needs a lot more work before it's done. But this is what the portal looked like. And at the end of it, Claude Code will very helpfully tell you exactly how much money on AI tokens you spent. I spent $2.79 of my own hard-earned money to have this AI build this app for me in less than 20 minutes, while all I did was tell it what I wanted the app to do and copy paste some bugs. Now, I want to give a huge caveat on this. That and this is the thing I feel passionately about, this works great for a small greenfield project that's going to have not that much to it. It's a lot more complicated than this, and you still absolutely need professional software engineers to do anything real that's going to scale to a large scale deployment. But this kind of tool in the hands of those folks to fix features and make changes is just absolutely game changing. All right, the last thing I'm going to do, just because it's fun, and if y'all haven't done this, I think it's the best way to spend a minute or two. So, a lot of these tools, particularly ChatGPT is good at this, has what's called a voice mode, where you can, instead of typing text to it, you can flip it into voice mode and have a conversation with it. And I absolutely encourage you, install the thick app. Like, don't just use the web version of ChatGPT on your phone. Install the ChatGPT app. Try this out. What is compelling to me about this, I do a lot of my work this way. It's the exact same model, whether you're typing to it or talking to it. But when you're talking to it, you change. I interact with it differently. I treat it more like a person, and treating it more like a person gets better results. Like, it's not about being kind to the robots for an ethical reason. It is when you interact with it like a person, you get better results. So I tested this out ahead of time and it seemed to work. So let's hope that live demos don't kill me here. Hey, so we just gave our talk on using AI to the nonprofit group. And I think maybe I want to take a question or two from folks here for you to answer. Is that okay?
Sure, Bryon, let's do it.
I'm going to mute. It's British, yeah. So, what? Honestly, no, she doesn't know. Barry found an interesting glitch in the machine earlier. But ask me a question for her. I have it on mute now. I'm going to repeat the question because if she can't hear you from back there very well, and it'll get muddled. Yeah. Somebody would like to ask you about how we should think about policies for in-house data and what to give to AI and what not to, and how to manage that as our organization is starting to adopt AI.
Great question. Start by defining clear data policies, identify sensitive information and restrict its use. Always anonymize personal data. Use access controls to ensure only necessary data is shared with AI tools. Regularly audit data usage and stay compliant with regulations like GDPR. Finally, train your team on best practices.
Little generic, but I mean, pretty good advice overall. I think we'll take it. Thank you.
Happy to help. Let me know if there's another question.
I think one of the points I'm trying to make for folks here is I work a lot as my assistant, like helping me compose talk and put in my earbuds and talk to you. Can you think of either pulling from stuff that we've done together or just your own imagination? Like what other kinds of things would you recommend for people who are just getting started with Gen AI tools?
Absolutely. Using voice mode can be a game changer for productivity. Start by using it for quick brainstorming sessions. You can dictate ideas, outline projects, or even draft emails while you're on the go. It's also great for setting reminders, making to-do lists, and summarizing meetings. Plus, it's perfect for practicing presentations out loud. The key is to experiment and find what works best for you.
That all day, but I know we're at time, so I'll cut off there. But just I really encourage y'all to try that. It's absolutely changed how I work with AI. I do it. I get in my car and get on and join the Bluetooth speaker, and I'll work with her on my way somewhere. I go take a walk. Everything we talk about is still in the chat history. So when I get back to my desk, I just open up ChatGPT there and I've got it. So we can actually do some really sophisticated work where I'm just casually walking and talking. It's how I built this presentation when I first built it. We walk, we talk, we brainstorm ideas, we compose it all together. And then at the end of it, I'm like, great, could you just summarize everything we did into a nice, tidy document that I can read or copy paste or do whatever I'm going to do with it at the end. And then I get back to my desk and I have it right there to work with. All right, last couple things, just talk about all the art I made here was done with AI. And, AI is not completely replacing human artists and designers. if you look at all these images, there's minor defects. They're not perfect, but you know what? For visual communication, for being able to put together a presentation like that, I think it's hard to argue that these images aren't compelling. They're certainly a whole lot better than I could have done myself with PowerPoint or with with any graphic tool. And for aiding in visual communication, these things are great. If you do have a designer who works with these things, they can use them to get to be really efficient at producing actual polished content. Same thing. All the little video clips I produced here were all done with AI generation. These video clips are actually the original ones I did like a year ago. I was using a tool called Pixverse. It's fine. I'm not endorsing it or not endorsing it. It's okay. Since then, last thing I'll do, and then we'll wrap up, because I think it's important to show failures too. And I want to show you a big fail I had with AI here, what I consider a fail. And even the failure is still pretty amazing. But Sora is the new tool from OpenAI for generating videos. It's much more capable than the things here. But if you're trying to do, it takes a lot of art to give with it. And I've learned that I am no movie director. So I was trying to put together a nice video showing a person who's basically multiplying her capabilities with AI. Like I wanted to say, like, this person can actually do the work of 20 people with AI. And I put together a script and I tried to make this work. And so this was the best final version I could get to. It's okay. I mean, it's pretty amazing video quality, right? Like you see the shadows and the lighting, and it's all kind of really good. But there's something just off. Like it's not very. It was not very compelling. However, it's a whole lot better than the first couple. So this is the first version I did, which really just gets creepy, I find. Like, I mean, we're just walking through the desk. Oh, what's that? I don't even know. I took that one and tried to improve it. This was the best I could get on that seed. This is a better version of that. Oh, analytics abilities. That's real words. And we did all this, and it's okay. That was not too bad. Now, yeah. So a couple things I want to highlight here. What is going on there, right? Each of those thumbs looks like a pretty good thumb, but there aren't two there, and there shouldn't be. And this is not right. And what is that? Where is that hand coming from? So, yeah. Anyways, that is it. That's the end of my talk. Sorry I ran over, Barry. But.
Okay, before we take a quick break, anybody have questions?
Thank you very much, Bryon. And Barry, I'm first on the sign up list for the next forum about the ethics of AI because you glossed over it. Pardon? I will never share my coffee. I'm very clear. But I feel like especially for nonprofits, the ethics of it all we can't gloss over because the rest of it's really cool. So I'd be really interested in that next topic.
So I appreciate you saying it's here. There's no fighting it. I'm all in on that, and I appreciate technology, and I want to see the natural systems, survive and thrive. And what are you most excited about that AI might do in the realm of really brilliant, wonderful ecosystems remaining?
Yeah,
natural ecosystems.
Yeah, I think it's a great question. I mean, I think, and as you look out over time, I'm going to really call back to that slide I doctored, which is like too hard to predict and way too hard to predict because these things start converging in ways that are going to be really hard to predict. But I think I think the biggest venue for change in the next, call it 2 years, is a reasonable timeline to make some predictions, is in using AI in scientific research. And I think that's an example of what you're talking about, because what it's doing is it's basically, this technology is really good at reading, synthesizing, understanding, drawing connections between things. And so what it's able to do is take all the research that still predominantly has been done by humans and find the connections, find those, those serendipitous connections that maybe don't. So I think, what we're going to see in terms of like just new drugs and medical treatments, advances in other realms of science, like it's taken about two and a half years from where we are to like get to the point where we really efficiently know how to do that at scale. And some of the most exciting research going on there is in the realm of like bringing together, all of our historical scientific research. And that's an area where, the humans involved in that in science are still very much involved and necessary. That's my best off the cuff answer. Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah.
Hi. So you've mentioned a couple of things. You've made reference to kind of the collective learning. The more users there are, the more information, the more learning that's occurring. So let's say we're doing this in our organization and we put our data in. Now, who owns that content and what's the intellectual copyright on that, your own content?
Yeah, great question. This is an area there, like, I think it's good to like dispel some of the fear on these things because I did mention, absolutely, ChatGPT released that out there for the purpose of collecting that training data, and they were also very upfront about that when they did it. We're like, we're training all this. When the way these models work, there are exceptions to this, but not material ones. I just in case there's any ML researchers in the audience who are going to call me out on that. Like there are these models generally the way they're architected though, they do not learn as they are used. Once they have been trained, right? Loading it up with a bunch of data is what's called training it. And every time there's a version of one of these models, they are trained on massive, massive, massive corpus of data. At that point, that version of that model is fixed. It's frozen. It's basically a giant matrix of numbers that sits on computers with powerful GPUs. And when you're asking it questions and doing what's called that step's called inference, but when you're interacting with it, you're asking questions, you're getting feedback back. It is not changing its weights and learning from that at all. The only way you can learn from that data is to capture it, and then later on go do another training round where you produce a new version of the model that's like, oh, based on these last 10 gigabytes of interaction, retrain and now get smarter based on that. What that means for you and your organization is all of these models, whether you're running it yourself kind of inside of Wall, or whether you're calling out to these things on the cloud like the OpenAI and Gemini models, when you pay for them for organizational use, they do not capture that data and use it to retrain. That is absolutely, it's part of the terms. Now, I mean, you obviously have to trust that they're doing what they say they're going to do there, but that's been true of all software for all time, right? If you send the data over there, you have to trust that they're following their own terms and conditions, but they don't capture that data. It doesn't go out and belong to anyone else. Your private data stays inside your walls, and that's true even if you do things like retraining sessions or what's called fine tuning, where you take the core model and you say, produce me a new version of this model that knows everything in the core model plus my organization's data. You can do that. That's still private to you. No one else sees that. That doesn't get folded back into the org. And that very much by design, right? Because you want to be able to use these things. You want to be able to put your organization's content so it knows what you know, and you don't want that to be known by anyone else. And that's very much how these systems work. Yeah.
Does that privacy apply when you use the free version and the paid version, or how does that work?
Good question. And so the question was, does that privacy apply when you use the free version versus the paid version? And for all of these things, it's tool by tool, the choice they make. And usually it's a setting you can choose. And sometimes, so it is true for some of these tools, if you're using the free version, either by default or always, they are actually training on that. And all these tools they're all upfront about it. You could check their ethics on how upfront they are about it, but if you before you go in and start putting your very private banking information into the model, you should make sure that they're not training on it. But at this point, all of the tools have a way to turn off any training. They also have a way to allow you to train on their data if you want to kind of contribute and give back to making it smarter. And certainly any of the tools that you're in a paid version for, they all have the option to say, please don't train on my data.
Okay, one more question so we can move on, then we'll take a break and then we'll go to the next presentation. Someone's got a question later. Who's the lucky person?
Yeah. Yeah, that's a really good question. I hope that some of the later speakers are even better equipped than me to have a good opinion on that. But what I'll say is, kind of going back to, I think my main thing, like the basics of this haven't really changed since the first version of ChatGPT came out. If you're, and so if you're looking to level up to more advanced use cases, I would say I would very much check the shelf life on those things because 9 months is an awful long time. And so I'd be very skeptical of something that was that old that hadn't been refreshed if you're looking to go from basic skills to more advanced. But if you're looking to kind of pick basic skills with these things, I think that that content's probably pretty evergreen. And again, the mental framing I would have, I mean, I'm not saying don't go out and get, like, there's great training materials that can be more specific than what I'm saying here, and you should look at those. And, there's tons of free content on YouTube and Coursera, Udemy, things like that. But, like, if you can have a conversation and you can copy paste text, the best training, I think, is go create an account on one of these tools and start using it, and ask it what it can help you with. Ask it to train you on its own use. The tools are pretty self-aware about what they can and can't do.
Okay, I'm sorry to those you have other questions. If my voice can't. We're going to take a 10-minute break.